So let's talk about these extra points. I think you know.
Society, we can open up again. We must open up again. But we need to do it carefully rather than carelessly.
He's giving fist bumps, and I'm just looking at the people next to the president, his Secret Service team that's part of this event with him, and they're also having to stand so close to many people without masks. And we know that there's an asymptomatic transmission, pre-symptomatic transition is a big thing too. Ron, do you think the handling of these White House outbreaks and just the way the president or the vice president have been conducting themselves at these rallies, really downplaying the coronavirus, in some cases making fun of the concern over COVID-19, will it change any votes?
Well, look, I think it has been an enormous political miscalculation as well as a public health catastrophe from the beginning. I mean, the president's choice right from the outset was to project normalcy at all costs, whatever the impact for public health, whatever was actually going on in the real world, and to try to tell the American people that, you know, what they were seeing in their daily lives was not really happening. And he's left himself in a position where from the beginning, 60% of the country has said they did not think he took it serious enough. They do not think he's listening to the scientists. And they do not believe that he is, that he is providing them truthful information about it. So, as is often the case, as I said, his strategy is to play to that minority that views all of this as something between a hoax and an ideological inconvenience. But I do think that going out and behaving in this way overshadows anything else he could possibly say. His closing message to the country is that no matter how bad this gets, don't expect anything different from me. And that is, I think, a tough way to end the campaign when we're looking at a record caseload.
And speaking of records, early voting has already surpassed the 2016 election early vote. And we still have 9 days to go. More than 58.7 million Americans have voted. What does that tell you, Ron?
Well, I mean, first of all, I'll tell you, a lot of people are going to vote. 138 million people voted in 2016. There are estimates we could be in the high 150s, 157, 158. If it's that high, the turnout will be the greatest, the highest it's been as a share of eligible voters since before women had the right to vote. You know, you can't automatically assume that this is good for the Democrats, because probably the greatest skill the president has shown is the ability to turn out large number of his supporters. And there are Democrats who are worried about how many non-college and non-urban whites are showing up in the Midwest. But overall, if you look at the numbers in the big urban centers, places like Harris County, Houston, Texas, where over 1 million people have already voted. What we're seeing in the Atlanta metro area, you are seeing the big population centers that have moved away from the GOP, that have recoiled from Trump's definition of the Republican Party, voting in big numbers. And it's going to be awful hard for him to find enough rural voters in places that are stagnant or shrinking in population to offset that if, in fact, we see the kind of margins that are possible. It is possible that, for example, Harris and Travis counties in Texas will give Biden double the margin that Hillary Clinton got 4 years ago, potentially a 1 million vote margin in the largest metros in Texas, which is why that state, which has been so reliably Republican since '76, even Texas is on the knife's edge at this point.
And in fact, we know that the Biden campaign has plans to go to Texas with Senator Harris. That's on her agenda. Thank you so much, Ron Brownstein, Dr. Schaffner. Great to see you as well. I really...
Needs. Whether you suffer...
Of course.
That's...
So he did try and cut your Social Security, just like he said for a year, there will be no fracking. And then he got through that, and he goes to Pennsylvania, and he says, you can frack. And then he denied it, and the media never did anything about it. They don't ask him the question. But the other day, fortunately in the debate, in one of the better parts of the debate, he said he's getting rid of it. So I think Pennsylvania is going to, he will not let you frack. It's not him. His party will never let you frack, okay? It's 1 million jobs in Pennsylvania, and for you, it's billions of dollars in energy costs. I will cut your taxes, not raise them, and I will always protect Medicare and Social Security, just like I've been doing. This election is a choice between a Trump recovering, and I call it a Trump super recovery, because that's what's happening, you see the name, and a Biden depression. If he gets in, you're going to have a depression, the likes of which you've never seen before, with the possible exception of 1929. He's going to raise your taxes through the sky. He's going to put all those regulations. It would take 18 years to get a highway approved. We have it down to 2. We're trying to get it down to 1. And it may not get approved for environmental or for safety reasons, but you're going to know very quickly. We have regulation cuts. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. He wants to put all that garbage back in, all that wasted stuff. And we have more cuts to come. And we need regulation. We're going to have regulation, but it's going to be reasonable. It's not going to be where it's impossible to build a simple road from point A to point B. So you have
to find out that dozens of others have died under mysterious circumstances just in 2020 alone.
So you can restore and recover. Theraflu.
To the near sideline, nobody home. Looking for Judy. Covering the play by Rashad.
If Amy Coney Barrett is appointed, I am scared. She supported a group that wants to criminalize the way I got pregnant. Doctors who perform it could end up in jail, and families like mine might not exist.
Call your senator. Demand Justice is responsible for the content of this advertising.
What if I sleep hot?
Or cold.
Introducing the
lasting harm on our children and massively reduce life expectancy for the American people, life expectancy. So, for the American people, you see what happens. And I came up with a statement. I don't know, I think it was me. They'll try and find somebody else said it 25 years ago. The cure cannot be worse than the problem itself. When you look at what's happening with these lockdowns, right? I mean, look at Michigan, how she's so vicious. She's vicious to everybody but her husband. He can do whatever he wants. He can go sailing, he can do whatever he wants. No, but look, and we won that case in the Supreme Court. Michigan has to open. It was unconstitutional. She was running like jail cells over there. And Pennsylvania and so many other places. But fortunately, you people are in good shape. You're in good shape. You have no complaints. Lockdowns will also lead to a surge in drug overdoses. That's what's happening. Drugs, alcohol, depression, suicides all over the place. Tremendous family disputes like they've never had before. It's a horrible thing that happens. The cure can't be worse. Under my leadership, we have marshaled the full power of government in our fight to end the opioid epidemic, to help those addicted, and to keep our precious children from getting hooked on drugs. It's had a tremendous impact.
Good as they are. Oftentimes deciding how they're going to vote closer to the election, maybe than other states. And so we take nothing for granted. We are ensuring people know they can vote today. If you're in Michigan, you are able to vote every day between now and November 3rd is election day. So pick a day, anytime between now and then, and get that vote in.
Now, the schedules for these two candidates could not be more different. Just take a look at the maps. Yesterday, the president was racing across the country, 4 swing states, Florida, North Carolina, Ohio, and Wisconsin. Meanwhile, the vice president made several stops across the border from Delaware in eastern Pennsylvania, and he has no public appearances, one virtual, but no public appearances today. Question, while Donald Trump is racing across the country, can Joe Biden stroll to victory?
I don't think it's strolling to victory. I think we are still in the midst of a global pandemic. The Trump administration has failed to address the global pandemic. We're 8 months in, and there's still not a national strategy. Joe Biden and his whole campaign have taken this pandemic seriously. When they do have events like the ones that Barack Obama had in the last few days and the ones that Kamala Harris and I are doing today, it is safe. We are wearing masks. We are spread out. We are having people in their cars so that they can be safe, because we respect the health and the safety of the people that we're hopeful that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris will be representing soon. No matter if you're a Democrat or a Republican, every one of us has a vested interest in an administration that has a plan to get COVID under control and get our economy back revving up where we all want to be successful. But right now, there's no plan in the Trump administration. Right now, people are in food lines who never imagined they'd be in food lines. Tens of millions unemployed and 225,000 dead.
Governor, Governor, let me ask you about another issue. This was widely considered to be Joe Biden's worst moment in this week's debate. Take a look.
Would you close down the oil industry? I would transition from the oil industry, yes. I would transition.
Basically, what he's saying is he is going to destroy the oil industry. Will you remember that, Texas? Will you remember that, Pennsylvania?
Biden has been trying to do cleanup afterwards, saying, well, he was talking about ending federal subsidies for the oil industry. And frankly, he's been all over the map on energy. In at least one of the Democratic primary debates, he talked about eliminating fracking. The question, I guess, is for people who depend on oil and gas jobs, including the auto workers in Michigan, why should they trust Joe Biden on energy?
Well, Joe Biden pays attention to science. We know that whether it's COVID-19 or climate change. Joe Biden is eager to eliminate subsidies, is really what his policy is. We shouldn't be subsidizing an industry that is continuing to contribute to climate change. He's not going to end fossil fuels. He's not going to end a lot of these industries from day one, but we should have a real conversation around ending subsidies and putting investment into green jobs, and investment into electric vehicles, investment into things that are really sustainable, that pay, have good paying jobs, and don't compromise our long.
What about fracking, Governor, what about fracking, where he was against it before he was for it?
Well, Chris, you've covered lots of campaigns, and you know that sound bites can make a candidate look as though they're not being consistent. However, the fact of the matter is, Joe Biden's always been consistent about following the science and believing that we should stake a path out that protects American jobs, and that's what Joe Biden's whole plan is, about building back better.
I want to talk to you about another issue. The president, in the debate, in the campaign, also went after Joe Biden for his family's business dealings with foreign countries, foreign companies. Again, take a look.
The horrible emails of the kind of money that you were raking in, you and your family. And Joe, you were vice president when some of this was happening, and it should have never happened. And I think you owe an explanation to the American people.
New information is coming out about the Biden family's business dealings with China. Really, two questions. One, does Biden owe more of an explanation to the American people? And was it a mistake for the vice president to allow all of this to go on, some of it while he was vice president?
Well, Chris, you just asked Ronna Romney if there was a scintilla of evidence that there was wrongdoing by Joe Biden, and she was able to produce none because none exists. The fact of the matter is, right now, we need to be talking about what isn't happening in this country, and that is we're not combating COVID. We've got COVID numbers increasing all across the country.
Governor, respectfully, I do need to ask. Governor, I do need to ask you this, though. There is evidence. It may be that Biden didn't take money, but clearly his brother, his son were involved in business dealings. There was talk about the Biden name. Wasn't that inappropriate for that to be going on while he was vice president? It sure sounds like influence peddling. And doesn't he owe a fuller accounting?
You know what, Chris, I think that Joe has sat for questions. He has answered these questions. The American people aren't going to be distracted from the fact that this election is about the dinner table issues. And the dinner table issue of 2020 is a Trump administration that has never been able to have a national strategy on COVID. The dinner table issue is the tens of millions who are unemployed because of the lack of a national strategy around COVID. The dinner table issue is the fact that so many people are in line at food pantries across this country because of a lack of national strategy around COVID. That's what we need to be focusing on, because that is life and death for the people of this country. And having a president who gets it, who has a plan, who will get us back to work and keep us safe, that's what Joe Biden offers.
Finally, I want to talk about a difficult subject.
Point race for Biden, even with those gains. Take a
14 men arrested for allegedly wanting to kidnap you and put you on trial for your lockdown orders. President Trump brought you up again at this week's debate. Here he is.
Take a look at what's happening with your friend in Michigan, where her husband's the only one allowed to do anything. It's been like a prison.
You had criticized the president, asking him to tone down the rhetoric, take down the heat, discussing this. What did you think when he brought you up again in a debate watched by tens of millions of people?
Well, we're just days since the plot to kidnap and try and kill me was revealed. 14 people have been arrested. First, I want to acknowledge the incredible work of the FBI and the Michigan State Police. But I also want to acknowledge that rhetoric like this contributes to bringing up the heat. I have asked the White House since April to bring the heat down. That's when the death threats started. We now know that my good friend Mike DeWine, Republican governor of Ohio, has been receiving threats. We know that people on both sides of the aisle who are just trying to do their jobs and save lives, like Dr. Fauci, have received threats. This kind of rhetoric is anti-American. It seeks to undermine the foundational principles that this country was founded on, in combination with ridiculing your profession, undermining our military, misusing them. All of these are efforts that will create such division and political and regime cleavage. It's going to be hard for us as a nation to come back together. But if anyone can do it, I know it's Joe Biden.
Governor Whitmer, thank you. Thanks for joining us. Always good to talk with you.
I wonder if I was on a team that scored 30 against those 1984 Vikings.
With Green Bay, it's possible.
Oh, yeah. We lit it up sometime.
Yo, Max.
He hit Dalton, evaluated for concussion, did travel back to Dallas with the team. Bostic kicked out of the game. Dallas loses, and they've got issues, including that play reaction.
We speak all the time about playing for one another, protecting one another. Definitely was probably not the response that you would expect.
Interesting perspective. Rodney, your thoughts on what Mike McCarthy said about the lack of reaction from the Cowboys?
Yeah, I agree with him wholeheartedly. The Cowboys quit today, and for you to sit there and watch your quarterback get knocked out, lay on the ground, and no one comes to his defense, I don't understand it. I look at the culture of this team, and they're soft. I mean, you see all those linemen, nobody says anything to Bostic. How could you allow your quarterback to get his head knocked off and no one comes to his defense? But it speaks to the culture, it speaks to the selfishness of the Cowboys, and the Cowboys flat out quit today, Mike.
Mike Florio, let me bring you in because you have the other side of it, the side from Washington's perspective when you talked to Ron Rivera, their head coach.
Yeah, Coach Rivera told me that he sought out Mike McCarthy, the coach of the Cowboys, to apologize for that hit. He said that he wanted McCarthy to know that that's not the way his team plays. And Rivera said he also went to John Bostic and said, you're a veteran. You should know better than to apply a hit like that. And Rivera had a broader message for his team before this game. They were 1-5 going in. The NFC East, as we all know, is very bad this year. But Rivera said, look, in 2014, his Panthers won the NFC South with a 7-8-1 record. He said people hated us. But you know what they did? They won the division, won a playoff game, and then went to Seattle and gave the defending Super Bowl champions a scare that year. So he's using that to get his guys motivated and believing that they can not just get to the playoffs, but actually make things happen if and when they get there.
And on the flip side, it's the Mets. Dallas is not scoring any points. We're glad.
Sorry.
She tested positive also. How about that? She was positive, and then she was better within a few days, But thank you. But she's great. People love Melania. Every time I go, they have signs. We love our First Lady. We love our First Lady. She's great, great First Lady. She represents you well, I can tell you. They don't treat her fairly, but that's all right. She understands it very well. She's done a great job, very popular. But when you look at what we've done, and the last time, right, 4 years ago, he will not do well with women. Right, Corey? Remember that? He will not do well with women. And then they said, wow, he did well with women. After they're crying. They said, what happened? What happened? He did well with women. Was that the greatest evening, really? Remember, I wasn't going to win Florida. I wasn't going to win North Carolina. I wasn't going to win Pennsylvania. Michigan wasn't even talked about. Nobody had won Michigan for decades and decades, Republican. Wasn't going to win Wisconsin, same thing. All of a sudden they start, the evening begins. Donald Trump has won the state of Ohio by 8 points. Nobody ever thought possible. That hasn't happened. So I start off with Ohio, and they all said, 8 points, what's going on? That's when we knew there was something happening. 8 points. Donald Trump won. Then we won Florida. We won Georgia. We won South Carolina. Then we won their firewall. They called it North Carolina. They spent a fortune. They spent a fortune in North Carolina. We won North Carolina. And then we just ran it up, and it was a beautiful, right? And then you saw these very unbiased anchors with the tears coming down. They were very unbiased. Remember John King with the red board, right? His hand was shaking at the end. He was like, well, this is not that bad that he lost Florida, that Hillary lost Florida. She can do, but when we started getting into Pennsylvania, North Carolina, they started getting a little bit worried, right? Now that was an amazing evening, and we're going to have an even more amazing evening in 10 days. After the virus hit, we recovered faster than any major nation in the world. We're in the process now, but there's no nation in the world that's recovered like we've recovered. Since April, we created a record 11.4 million jobs. We've spent the last 4 years reversing the damage Joe Biden and Obama inflicted. Look, we've done more in 47 months than Sleepy Joe has done in 47 years. And I really mean it, too. I really mean it.
Up with that, Kim, one thing we didn't expect is a big cash advantage for Joe Biden in the final week of this campaign. Take a look at these numbers. The Trump campaign canceled $24.6 million in television ad buys in 10 states, while the Biden campaign added $16.3 million of television ad buys in 13 states. Kim, what do you make of that? And also what Jonathan also referred to, which is the president's hectic campaign schedule, and meanwhile Joe Biden's much more leisurely stroll for these final days.
Yeah, well, there's no question that Joe Biden and the fundraising has given them a real advantage, and you saw that in particular in the first 2 weeks of October, and those ad buys, you said they outspent the Trump campaign on TV 2-1. Now, as you go forward,
thrush, pneumonia, and osteoporosis. Call your doctor if worsened breathing, chest pain, mouth or tongue swelling, problems urinating, vision changes, or eye pain occur.
She wanted someone who loves cats, so we got Chris Walda. Dinner's almost ready.
But one thing we could both agree on was getting Geico, who has defended the cuts as non-political, postpone the changes. But on-time mail delivery is still suffering and triggering new lawsuits. In North Carolina, an appeals court upheld the state's deadline to receive absentee ballots 9 days after Election Day, a decision Republicans are signaling they'll challenge at the Supreme Court. The second win for Democrats? On Monday, the High Court handed down a ruling allowing mail-in ballots in Pennsylvania to count if they're received within 3 days of November 3rd.
Our thanks to Pam Brown there. As coronavirus cases surge across the country, officials in one Texas city are imploring residents to stay inside for the next 2 weeks. We'll talk to the mayor of El Paso next. You're live in the CNN Newsroom.
All OTC.
Diminish wrinkled skin in just 2 days. New Crit Corrector Lotion, only from Gold Bond. Champion your skin.
Domino's knows a thing or two about delivery. So when we saw people were getting taco...
And Curtis Samuel bangs it in, a rushing touchdown. Chris, we're tied at 24. Let's go to the fourth quarter late. New Orleans leads by 3. This is a big play as Bridgewater's trying to move him down the field and get sacked.
Yeah, well, it gets the big sack here that, of course, is going to force a big, longer field goal. But the Dennis Allen, the D coordinator, him being able to create a mismatch and ultimately getting 92 Davenport on the running back, coach, as we know, that ain't going to work out in the favor of the offense.
It's called a mismatch.
That's called a mismatch for a reason, and they get the sack.
So Matt Rule says, let's go, Joey Sly. Let's try 60 55-yard field goal right down the middle and about 2 yards short. Would have been the longest field goal, obviously, in the history of the league. It comes up a bit short. So too do the Panthers. New Orleans moves to 4-2, staying a half length behind Tampa. Bucks highlights it a little bit. Bucks beat the Packers last week. Pack bounce back. Go to Houston, take on the 1-5 Texans. Aaron Rodgers, no touchdowns, 2.
Because of what you just brought up with Governor Whitmer, is there's a lot of people that are trying to make this solely about whether or not you can prove Joe Biden cashed in and got money. But the real issue here is influence peddling. And what we know now, look, I think it's really important, is that now that Hunter Biden's former partner has come out, this is real, and he's provided documentation. A lot of people are understanding this is not Russian disinformation. This is a real story. And what it makes exceptionally clear is that Hunter Biden was using the family name to drum up a lot of dollars. And it also calls into question Joe Biden's truthfulness with the American people. He has said repeatedly, I have not discussed my son's business. But if these documents are to be believed, he indeed met with Hunter's former partner. There is a potential possibility, given this equity document we saw, that Hunter was going to hold a stake in Joe Biden's name.
Right.
And I think he does have to answer some questions about this.
Mo, you get equal time. Why isn't it a big deal?
Look, I think, what you saw at the debate crystallizes why this is so complicated for the Trump campaign politically to try to push this narrative, particularly here at the end.
Yeah, but I'm not asking you that. I'm asking you, Mo, I'm not asking you about Trump. I'm asking you about Biden. Why do you say that all of these emails about the business dealings don't speak to Joe Biden's character and truthfulness?
Well, because it has nothing to do with Joe Biden. When you look at anything that's been out there, there's no proof, and you brought this up and with both of your previous guests. There's nothing connecting Joe Biden to anything untoward, and that's been investigated, and that's been put out there. So I think this is really just one of the reasons, and I think people get that, which is one of the reasons why, despite hammering this issue for months and months and months, it's not giving the president's campaign the traction they had hoped it would give them here at the end of the campaign.